This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, thought I'd just send you a voice note there while I'm waiting for dinner. That's been lovely cooked by my partner. Gonna have some duck as I get the tail end of my birthday little niceties. Now, I'm normally a person who believes that your birthday is only on your birthday, and I'm not even a fan of my birthday, but just because I went to Ireland for my birthday, as you know, I had a few little things to look forward to when I came back, and one of those things was a surprise thing my partner brought me to, which was a thing called Poppy Love, where you just get to hang out with about 5 or 6 puppies for an hour, which to any animal lover is amazing. So I got surprised with that, and you're just hanging around with some, I think, cockapoos is what they were. So I came back from that Saturday very sleepy, very relaxed, which is hard to be these days and hard to be in London for sure, especially after coming back from Ireland. And sat myself down for a movie Saturday evening, and I thought, I'm really tired. I really need something, just something brain dead, something I can just fall into with no lack of ease and just have a good time with. And as I'm scrolling through my streaming service, I'm looking for an action movie. I'm looking for something, just something I can switch on, brain goes dead, and I'm not wanting to read any subtitles. And I realized with all these movies on my streaming service, I don't have any just brain dead action movies. I've got a few Jason Statham that I've seen, and then there's a section on it where it recommends movies to you, and just coincidentally, there was a 30-minute movie that I remember I tagged, or whatever you want to call it, watch listed it, because someone mentioned it on Letterboxd, called Full Alert. I'm thinking, okay, this is 1 hour, 30 minutes. There's a guy with a gun on the cover. Okay, let me give this a chance. And within a minute, just in the tone and the way it went about presenting itself, I thought, okay, I am on board with this movie. And so much so that the subtitles were messing up, and I went into the back room and I fixed the subtitles. It took me about 20 minutes to do, just so I could watch this movie on the strength of basically a scattering of shots. And that'll just go to tell you how much in the pocket I was in the movie that I was watching, how it connected with exactly what I needed exactly at that time. And I don't think I've ever had an experience where I put on a new movie and it just quenches my thirst for what I wanted that evening. So I had a really good time with this movie. It's called Full Alert, in case I didn't mention. It's directed by Ringo Lam, who directed City on Fire. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, and I don't even know if I've seen that movie, but it's certainly been on my list for a while. I checked back afterwards, and it's been on my watch list. I don't remember if I've seen it, but I'm certainly a director that I'm familiar with without diving too deep into. And yeah, when I'm starting this movie to begin with, it's got the score of those 90s American action movies, just exactly where you know you're going to stand based on the music. And it's got this great shot of this detective coming across this crime scene as the camera goes up into this building, and then we see what is revealed to be an architect submerged underwater. And just the vibe with the camera work, at least that this was presenting, was something like Seven. Now, it's not a like for Seven at all. It's much more akin to a popcorn action movie, but this guy is a hell of a director. And on the strength of this movie, I've downloaded a bunch of his other movies: City on Fire, Prison on Fire. And I can't remember what other movies that I've added to my list of things to watch. But yeah, this guy is a master at doing what he does and doing action. And I haven't really read too much about him and how influential he was, but I wouldn't be surprised if this guy is directly responsible for many of the fundamental aesthetics and sequences we get in American action movies that me and you grew up in. So, for all intents and purposes, feel like I am watching a American movie that I grew up in, an era of watching those type of movies. I've uncovered a completely different gem. Like, it feels so westernized, and I presume that the West took a lot from this guy in these movies, but it's just strange to see a movie that's from Hong Kong and from the same era of movies that you would grow up on watching movies from America, and they're just feeling so much alike. So I'm absolutely transfixed with this movie to begin with. In terms of, we talked about genre endorphins when I was mentioning the Blob and what you were getting from it. I know you are a fan of action movies, so we'll see when and if you do get to this movie, because I can appreciate you're in the middle of Spooktober right now, so you probably won't get to it for a while. But anyway, so this movie's plot, although straightforward in many ways, I just really like how they went about telling the story. As it turns out, when you finish the movie, it's a very standard type of action movie in terms of its portrayals. It's good guys, it's bad guys in one sense, but in another sense, there's a few things in its storytelling and a few things that are dropped into it that really adds a lot of layers to that genre that I'm so familiar with. And it's something that I don't see very done often, and I don't see examined very often. So you just throw in these two sprinkles of things, and it just really adds a lot to a genre that we're both very familiar with. So to begin with, the characters in this movie are not super. And by that I mean there's no super cop in this. There's no super villain. There's no super level of expertise. And that setup alone lends itself to feeling like this is not something that any of these characters encounter in their everyday lives. What's happening in this movie is an exceptional situation that they're all living, and in many cases they want to get out of. This isn't something that they deal with very often. So seeing characters in a very heightened sense of distress, in a heightened sense of chase sequences, in a heightened sense of shootouts that at the core you believe that they're not very used of, really adds tension in sequences that would the stakes be presented a little bit different, like Jason Statham, like Arnie, or just even in later Bruce Willis movies in Die Hard, where they're just presented as superheroes so much that even if he is meant to be an everyman, even if this John McClane is now meant to be an everyman years later. I mean, Die Hard the first Die Hard does this very well, where you just feel like he's a cop. He's a cop caught up in this. And then obviously as the movies went on, it strayed away from this. In Full Alert, you feel like all these people are caught up in this situation and they are trying to do their best with their limitations to get out of it. For starters, the start of this movie, the main antagonist, shall we say, he kills the architect over a gambling debt, and he's almost doing it in self-defense, I think, from memory, where he didn't necessarily want to do it, and he is immediately caught by the police along with his girlfriend, and through this arrest they realize that they have stumbled upon something much bigger. And so the fact that this guy has been arrested to begin with and he is fallible gives a very nice wrinkle that you could be good at what you do, you could be a good criminal, but you could just be arrested like anyone else. This movie constantly has exceptional things married to grounded scenarios in a way, which I absolutely loved. And I've never really seen the fine line between this type of thing done in movies before. And it's something that I didn't think I needed, but I absolutely loved. So he's caught, he's sentenced to life in prison, and they're trying to get him to flip on this other crew who I think are from Taiwan. And they sent him to jail, like I said, and then he's stuck in jail. He's there for life. And then we get these other characters we're introduced to with this heist. I think the reason why they stumble across it is because the architect had plans to this vault that was hidden that they just happened to come across by happenstance when they're trying to, I think they're trying to do something else, and they find this vault in the same place as something else. I can't remember what it is, but it's not necessarily their initial aim. I could be wrong at that as I try to explain it, but it doesn't matter. So the Taiwanese crew, they are tasked with trying to break the antagonist out of prison. And I love the time it takes for these little scenarios where we see this crew and they're thinking, is this guy going to flip on us? I can't believe he got caught. What are we going to do? Because they still want to do the job. They still want to do the heist. So you can really understand their options. And I like the way they even say, if we can't break him out, we're going to have to kill him. But it's not the first option. So yeah, the film is really set up nicely. And it almost works in reverse to an extent, where the main antagonist is arrested and he needs to be rescued, and they need to pull off a heist despite the main heist master being behind bars. And now the other thing is, while he is behind bars, he's left contemplating something that has really changed him as a person, and that is he's killed for the first time. And I really like the way bodies matter in this movie. We have the main detective who also really grapples with the people he's killed in the line of duty. Now I think he's only killed one, and we get that great scene where he is thinking back to a shootout, and he sees himself as both the person who's shooting and then the victim on the ground. And there's almost a sense of PTSD in both these characters, while they're going about their tasks in this movie. I think it's really good to find and follow a character such as the cop who has very much lost his bottle and doesn't really want to be chasing these people and doesn't really want to have to deal with this. He's got a wife and a kid, and his priority now is very much getting home to them. And yeah, I'm not really comparing this to a Seven in terms of its tone, but there's a lot of themes of Seven and this type of morally repugnant and dirty underbelly of what cops and criminals do and the toll it takes doing this type of work, like we see with Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt. There's an underpinning of that in this movie. Now, again, it's not the same in its darkness of tone for the most part, and this movie is very much a fun action movie in many ways, but yeah, there's just the underpinnings of this fundamentally adds and changes to what you see. And the other thing that really breeds energy and flair to every scene is just how good of a director this guy Ringo Lam is. There's a scene on the highway where there's a car chase, and it's just breathtaking, and it's just very practical stunts, very practical framing, very practical visual storytelling without CGI. And I didn't think I'd see something like this again, and I never even knew it existed. And it seems to be a movie that's very much lost in time. No, we were talking in another chat before about movies that don't really have many, what's the word, viewers on things like IMDb. Well, this is about, I think it's got 6,000 people watched on Letterboxd, and it's got 1,500 on IMDb. So this is very much a movie that's forgot. And yeah, in that scene in the highway, it's just brilliant in the fact that they're going on their way to break this guy out of prison. I think he's getting transported, and they get made by one of the sergeants, and they're just trying their luck. They don't have much of a plan other than that they just need to break out this guy, and they're going to try it. Like lots of criminal activity, it's very much a grab and snatch instead of a mastermind plan. I think it was at Fallout when they have the guy played by Sean Harris where he needs to be broken out, and there's this big sequence, this big elaborate sequence where he's trying to be broken out, and I think Tom Cruise actually has to break him out, and it's just really over the top. And I love that sequence, don't get me wrong, but it's really cool and really exhilarating to see a sequence like this that you kind of feel like any criminal can pull this off if they're lucky enough, but it just depends on what happens on the day. And what happens on the day in this movie is that they don't manage to pull it off, and we get this great sequence where this car flips over and gets absolutely totaled, and it's just brilliant directing. And the bad guys get away, and in other movies, and especially in other action movies, it would end there, but no, we get a slowdown, and we get this scene where the detective is trying to get this person out of the car, and people are really agonizing over that spectacular car sequence that we just saw. There's real consequences in world to the spectacular in this movie, where like we're watching an action movie and we're thinking, wow, that's a yeah, cool sequence, but everyone else in world is thinking, holy fuck, that car just went over the ramp and our colleague got absolutely mangled. There's just that sentiment built into this movie, and just the fact that it takes time in that scene is really good. And later on, we get this scene where there's a second breakout attempt while in the prison, and it's just as simple as him running to the chopper, and it just happens to work out. It's not very elaborate, but what it is very well filmed and tense, and it's a very good sequence. And the movie's filled with brilliant sequences like this. There's another scene where the detective is chasing, I think, the main antagonist. I can't remember his name. He's chasing him down, and basically the antagonist doesn't want to kill again. And they have a scene about that where he's really struggling with killing people. So the detective is trying to follow him down these narrow streets, and there's all this water hanging over this tarpaulin, and they get into a struggle, and the main antagonist criminal just doesn't kill him, and you can kind of understand his motivations, and it doesn't feel like a cop-out. It feels like, okay, no, this guy is gonna have nightmares about this in prison. And after that, we get this great sequence where he's running across the road, and the detective fires a few stray bullets, and at the start you think he's shot the guy on a motorbike, this random passerby. But no, it's just something that's happened in the middle of this crossfire. The guy hasn't got shot, and we get this brilliant practical stunt of this motorcycle flying down these bunch of steps, and the motorcycle is getting absolutely clattered. And to have a stunt like that, that's a really center stage and point of focus that doesn't actually involve the main character, is just caught in the crosshairs or something like that. It's just really good use of just action movie aesthetics and bystanders. It's something that takes place in between the space of the two characters in the chase, and there's not a lot going on in the sense of that in that moment, so it's just jaw-dropping. And yeah, I think as the movie goes on in the final third, it and if you certainly get into the heist elements of this, the movie slows down a bit, and we get less of those type of action sequences. Now, I enjoyed the heist. Now, it gets quite predictable by this point, and I'm not necessarily saying that as a knock, but it just becomes a little bit more standard in watching stuff unfold from that point for a while. The Taiwanese gang want to. The main Taiwanese guy takes a gun on the heist because he think he's going to double cross the antagonist who went to prison, and yeah, stuff like that. And even the Taiwanese guy, the head of the gang, when he beats the henchman over the head in the graves when they're digging a grave for one of the colleagues, you kind of feel like, no, he doesn't do that every day. He's just working with an incompetent member of a team, and he just fucking snaps because he's lost someone he really cares about. Now, I'm not saying this movie is really deep with any of that, but yeah, it's really, really cool. And with the heist itself, I really like the conception of that, where they drill their way up into the safe. The detective is a few steps ahead of the game, but the thing that stops them busting them in that moment is the bureaucracy of the safe owners trying to ring the person to override the safe. So the cops are at the other side of the safe door. The people are taking the money, and the only thing that stops them busting them is waiting on a phone call. And that's a really cool way to put a block in the way of our heroes achieving their goal. So yeah, it's filled with nice stuff like that. And again, I don't know why I keep comparing this to Seven, but maybe that's because it probably came out in 1997 as well. I don't know. And again, I'm not making the case it's tonally the same, but do you know in Seven, at the end of that movie, where actually I'll try and do this without dropping spoilers for anyone who haven't seen Seven, but the stakes of a movie would normally be the bad guy getting killed would be a good thing. But in movies like Seven and in movies like this, they flip the dynamics enough. Whereas the thing that you would normally be rooting for happening would actually be a bad thing. So at the end of this movie, there's a shootout between the main antagonist guy who's been in prison and the cop, and then the girlfriend of the antagonist. And there's a real restraint in order for people not to die in that scene. And when the detective ends up shooting the girlfriend and shooting the antagonist so they don't get away in this shootout, in fact, he shoots the girlfriend first, and then I think that adds the extra push for the final criminal to pull his gun on him. But I couldn't even think of a more, I don't know if emasculating is the right word, but an emasculating way to give us a final image of our hero in an action movie as our detective crying, contrasted to the person he's just killed as the credits roll. That's a really different way to end an action movie that has fundamentally given you all the thrills and spills up to that point. It's a bold way to end it. And yeah, it's just very different type of action movie while being very fundamentally familiar, and I had a good time with it. It's not gonna change your world or anything, but it is one of these movies that is a very, very solid genre movie that would probably be very enjoyable to people like me and you, and I know a few other good friends who've just grown up on this 90s type of vibe of movie in this genre. So yeah, don't know when you'll get to it. Normally I don't like sending voice notes well in advance of you getting back to them because I won't remember anything, but I feel like this type of movie, I just wanted you to see it. I want you to get your thoughts. I think you'll have a good time with it. And yeah, let's see what you have to say when you get to it.
Hey man, it's Saturday, middle of the day right now. Just waiting outside the leisure centre here while my daughter has her swimming lesson. Doing a few laps, grabbing a few snacks. Went to bed real early last night and consequently woke up at about 5:30, something like that. So I thought, oh, perfect. Finally get around to that movie that Andrew sent me. When was that? Ooh, about 6 weeks ago. You've sent that voice message on Full Alert, which is the most generic title ever that I can't get that title hard coded into my brain. I keep calling it different things. But yeah, the opportunity presents itself kind of a little similar to you, where you just kind of, you had a spot of time, you needed the right movie, and it sort of felt appropriate for me being in a bit of a half awake state, although I quickly came to my senses, made a cup of tea before starting it, and had a great time with it. Feel very similar to you. I think I could probably have echoed every sentiment that you expressed there, word for word. It's a really, really good movie, fantastically directed. This guy, Ringo Lam, if that is his name, I've often heard his name mentioned. I think I've probably been hearing his name mentioned in association with John Woo. When people want to say John Woo movies, but they want to make it sound a little bit more learned, they go, Hong Kong crime flicks like John Woo and Ringo Lam. So he's, I would assume, sort of like the second most noteworthy director in that scene. Not exactly the same. I mean, trying to say that this feels like a John Woo movie exactly, but it's definitely an association that would come to mind. This is a bit later by 97, I guess, Wu was making American movies. I think Face Off might have come out in 97, was it 96, 97, something like that. I think it was actually 97. So interesting comparing them. You brought up Seven a lot. I thought of Seven a lot. I thought of Heat a lot. There's a whole bunch of American movies that I thought of watching this. And that's because I'm much more familiar with American cinema than I am Hong Kong. But one Hong Kong series that I have seen is the Infernal Affairs movie. And I've seen a few other kind of crime movies. But before I watched this, I assumed, which is, call this racism if you want, but I assumed it was going to be a martial arts movie. And then when it sort of started off, I was like, oh, this doesn't look martial arts. This is going to just be an action movie. And it's not either. It's like a hard-boiled crime movie. Now, it's got, I guess, sort of action sequences, which is, again, an association with Heat. Heat came out in 95. I think Seven came out in 95. And I was very much thinking about this movie as being... like, if this was an American movie, you would just like very simply go, this is a post-Heat movie, this is a post-Seven movie. Because it's from a different culture, it's maybe a little harder to make the claim because you just don't really know about how influence worked between those two countries. But it definitely feels like there's a heavy influence there. So that was a thing that was going on in my head quite a bit. And it has that Heat thing of, it's not an action movie, but if it needs an action sequence, we're going to put an action sequence in it. And all these movies I'm mentioning are absolute masterpieces, like 5-star, some of the best films of the 90s. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily reach that standard, but it is just really good. And I think the way you described it, I'd kind of describe it in the same terms of it's... if you start watching it and you're just immediately happy and comfortable in the genre space that it occupies. It's so slickly directed. I mean, I'm literally talking about, like, from the opening credit sequence is fantastically stylish, and it just keeps on going from then on. I do agree that the third act, it does sort of start to drag a little bit at certain points, but it's not long before it gets back on track and we get into the kind of finale. It's got strong characters throughout, but the main antagonist, or who kind of eventually emerges as the main antagonist, oh God, I wish I could remember the name, Mark Wan or something. He is brilliant. Like, he's a brilliant character. He's one of the great kind of gray shades of gray. He is the villain, but he's also got a code and all those things that we love. Like, he's a great example of that. It's an interesting movie. Always interesting to watch movies from other countries, far away, different times, stuff like that. This is set, well, it's released in 97. It's set in 97, and 97 was the year that Hong Kong was handed over from the British to the Chinese. And this movie, we learn from one line of dialogue, takes place just before that, and all the street names are English names and stuff, and it's just interesting capturing this moment. I know we've both seen a fair bit of Hong Kong action stuff from the 80s, so seeing like something right in the final months of one era of Hong Kong before it switches over to another is interesting. I'm certainly intrigued to watch more by this director. I've looked him up on IMDb. Seems to be some like movies that are like highly regarded. I think he's still working. Don't know if he's still putting out work that's very celebrated, but yeah, this one really did it for me. You mentioned that the characters are not like superheroes, which is cool. I agree with that. Although they are a little bit of that Michael Mann thing of like people who are good at their job. Not great, not supernaturally good at their job. They're not infallible, but there is, you do feel like everyone involved, the cops and the criminals, are like pretty serious. They kind of know what they're doing. But it's also a crime movie rather than an action movie. So there is that grounded element. You talked about how it's like marrying the exceptional with the grounded. That again is very Heat. It's very Michael Mann. It's very like stylized, but also you buy into the world. I really liked the weight of killing, to put it in a weird way, like the fact that death in this movie, whether it's deaths that we see in flashback that happened prior to the film, or whether it's deaths that are contemplated doing that don't actually happen, or it's deaths that happen within the movie, or near misses where someone like almost dies but doesn't quite die. Like death is treated with much more seriousness in this film than almost any other crime film I've ever seen. And in the real world, death is very serious. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a murder detective or who you are. Death is like a very, very serious thing. Even for people within organized crime syndicates, like death isn't just, and I think it's very rare for any human that death becomes like a nothing-y thing to them, but it is a nothing-y thing in most movies that are like this. So it's a really nice note to this film that death has such serious implications, emotional, psychological implications for the people involved. By the end of the movie, I was like, I really wanted the bad guy to get the money and get away. Of course, he can't. I sort of felt like, and again, I don't know a huge amount about Hong Kong cinema, but I sort of felt like, and it's not technically not a Chinese film, it's a British film if you want to be like really pedantic about it, but I sort of feel like Chinese cinema, you can't really have someone, it's just such an agent of chaos and such a grey character ultimately get away. But I like that the movie had me thinking that maybe that was a possibility, because we've got this mutual respect thing that we see in a lot of films. You even see it in films like Face Off, where the characters don't respect each other in the sense of like any admiration or something, but they respect the threat. Like they don't underestimate the other person. But there's the relationship between the two main characters, I suppose, the main cop and the main baddie, is really, really good in this, and it's really interesting. Also, like, even though you don't see many scenes of it, and you have to kind of like make it up in your head a bit, but I like the relationship between the main bad guy and his girlfriend. They're very committed to each other, and I like that, how committed everyone in this film is to what they're planning to do, how much they're not going to back down in the face of, you know, like, for example, they know that the police know that they're going to rob the horse racing place, but also like, no, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do. And it's also like, I've got an axe to grind here. It's a bit of a revenge mission, and yeah, it's really good. So yeah, really enjoyed it as a film. I think you've already spoken to most of what I would compliment the film on, so again, very much agree. And now my son is starting to pipe up, so fitting time to end this voice note. But thanks for sending it my way. And also, I think you might have, since you sent that voice note, hit another film by this same director, if I'm not mistaken. So let me know how you're faring in your adventures through Ringo Lam world. One other little tidbit that I forgot to mention there in my first voice note is, did you notice, or am I going mad, that this movie, for the most part, has a horror score? I don't know if it would be considered a horror score by Hong Kong or Chinese standards, but the score is basically the same as like the likes of Scream, like a 90s horror movie. And it lends the film a really intense, dark, serious vibe. And I don't know if I've ever really seen that before. Obviously, it is in the realm of the likes of Seven and Silence of the Lambs, this movie, which are kind of horror adjacent. But I definitely wouldn't describe this film remotely as horror. But the use of what I would very much describe as a horror score is really interesting and really effective. So yeah, that was something I picked up on, and immediately from the get-go kind of had me wondering, is this going to be sort of like a serial killer? You know, like what's that movie, Fallen, with Denzel Washington, or any of those kind of post-7, like Kiss the Girls, all that. Felt like it was going to be one of those sort of things a little bit at first, especially with that body in the bathtub. And then it's not. It's more of your kind of classic Hong Kong crime movie, a hard-boiled or whatever. But the horror score, like I said, just is a very interesting juxtaposition. So yeah, let me know if that was something that registered.
Yeah, the horror movie score, as you put it, is a observation I'd forgotten about, or something that I didn't necessarily have in my head. It definitely adds to a level of intensity, and it adds to something that immediately gets you thinking that it's something fucked up has happened, like a serial killer movie. But I guess coming out of Spooktober, or coming out of just the amount of horror movies you've seen, that I can see how you would attribute it to a horror-like score. I don't disagree, even though I didn't pin it as a horror movie score. But at the same time, thinking about it now, isn't it interesting that in a movie that, as you said, really cares about the weight of death, that it would use a score like that? And maybe that is intentional, in the way that just seeing any dead body, if you're a cop, would feel like the scene of a horror movie, even if it's a road traffic accident. So maybe the horror-like score might be there to reinforce the horror of death itself, not necessarily give you a genre cue like it's going to be that type of movie. But we're just so clued into what that type of music normally signifies that we immediately thought it was going to be something like that. But yeah, glad you had a good time with it. When you responded and I just saw the length of your voice note and you didn't have much to say, I thought, oh shit, this guy's gonna send a 10-minute voice note of just saying how bad of a time he had. But good to know you had a similar experience as me. Yeah, it's a movie, even in the Ringo Lam canon, that is not widely known and widely seen. So I'm glad to have seen it myself and bring it your way. I love the way you said, oh, Ringo Lam seems to be still making movies. Well, I'd be very impressed by that, considering he died in 2018. But I think he did have a movie out in 2020 as part of an anthology. Yeah, I think these type of movies are, I think they call it Hong Kong New Wave and Hong Kong, the second wave of the new wave. So I think this falls on the second wave, which ended at Infernal Affairs, which you mentioned. Yeah, I've been watching a bunch of these movies lately, so I'm very much clued into this world and this genre at the minute, and I'm having a very good time. Now, this is probably the best one I've seen, and even though I've enjoyed them all, this is definitely a cut above. Now, when I say them all, I mean I've been watching a combination of John Woo movies and Ringo Lam movies. So the Ringo Lam movie I saw after this was Full Contact. It's a much more sillier movie, very, very silly. And I think Ringo Lam, he was criticized about the politics of his films, and he just wanted to make a movie devoid of politics, and it's very, very devoid of anything except pure silly fun. But it is very good, silly fun. And I mean even silly by the standards of these movies. And then what else have I seen? I've seen A Better Tomorrow, which is good, but A Better Tomorrow 2, the sequel, which I watched there the other day when I was a guest on my friend's show. We watched it for that. I think that's probably my favorite John Woo Hong Kong movie that I've seen. That's great fun, and probably my favorite Chow Yun-fat performance as well. He's just a charisma machine in that. Then what else did I see? I think I saw the Killer, the other day as well, which is the John Woo movie, which again is a step down from this, but very good fun. Very worthwhile seeing. And it kind of made me understand John Woo's movies in a different context, even leading the way to Face Off. So I'm glad I've seen that movie as well. And it does seem like a very prototypical beginning of the kind of, this person's a cop, this person's a criminal, but they're not so different after all, type of thing, which happens all the time in these Hong Kong movies. So I wonder what was going on in the country at the time, that just people felt very much like the cops were criminals at times, and then the criminals weren't necessarily so bad. But yeah, so I've been enjoying myself. I think the movie I'm going to go watch next is the Ringo Lam movie City on Fire. Not sure if it's his first movie, but certainly he's very influential with directors like Quentin Tarantino and a few other people I really respect put that movie in high esteem. And so I think I'll go back to that next. I still have on my DVD shelf, I've still got Full Contact, A Better Tomorrow 2, and all these movies I've referenced. So if you do want a loan of them, you know where they are. They'll be there anytime for you. And yeah, this is a very, very good movie that probably more people should see.
Hey man, just doing some shopping in the Chinese supermarket right now. Pretty hectic. Yeah, can't disagree with anything you've said. Don't really have much to add. Again, I mean, as you commented, my voice notes on this one are pretty short, but it's not a symptom of any lack of passion for the movie. It's just, you said it all. It's a great flick, and definitely interested in some of those other movies you mentioned. I think I've seen Better Tomorrow 1, but not 2. So yeah, I always feel a bit like out of the loop with this kind of cinema, but yeah, no time like the present to get schooled up a bit.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.